Welcome to our third Advent Project 2022. Let's get into our surprise box and find our surprise. We are looking for December 6th. Yes, here's my bag. December 6th. Let's take a look at what's inside. See if we get some hints on what we're making today. We have some batting and some fabric and, a cool gift. Wow, a G Design spatula. I wonder if that is a hint on what we will be making. I'm thinking it's going to be something for baking because we have batting that has insole. Right. Let's check it out. So to make the pot holder, you will need two types of batting. We have polytherm fleece, which has an aluminum layer, which is the heat insulating layer, and then just a layer of regular polyester batting, not fusible. Then you're going to need 3 fat quarters for the outside of the pot holder, for the pocket, and then for binding. So we're going to start by layering our outside of the pot holder. So that's the fabric I want to use for that. And so what we want to do is layer the 2 battings, and you can use spray adhesive to attach them together. So we just want to attach them together any which way. We want to make sure that these 2 are attached, and then we're going to take our fat quarter that is going to be for the outside of the pot holder. You can cut it in half lengthwise, and then we're going to fuse this, we're going to use a spray adhesive. I used a spray adhesive. You can attach it any which way. 1 piece on this side and then 1 piece on the other side. So what we essentially want to do this first step is quilt all these layers together. And you can do that any which way. You want to use a walking foot. You can do diagonal lines, straight lines, long straight lines. You can free motion, but we want to make sure that we attach the 3 layers. So what I did with my piece is I just did diagonal lines just about 1 inch apart. They're not 100% even, really doesn't matter. So now you have this quilted layer that has the 2 layers of batting in between, fabric on each side. So the next thing we want to do is cut out our shape for the pot holder. So you want to trace the design you had in the pattern, the free pattern, and just place it on your quilted piece, and you're going to draw around 2 ovals. So you can use a pen or anything else. So you just want to draw the shape all the way around, and you're going to be able to make 2. And then we're going to cut that out just with scissors. The next thing we're going to do is cut our binding. So we have our fat quarter for the binding, and we want to make sure we are cutting this on the bias to be able to go around the oval shape. So we're going to take our fat quarter. I have my selvage on the side, and you want to fold it diagonally like this. So you're bringing the raw edge top and the selvage together. So you're creating this fold here diagonally. I'm going to turn it, and this little top piece here, I'm going to fold this even with the raw edge like this. I know this is a small edge, but then this fold I'm going to bring down even with my bottom fold here. So now I can fold this whole thing in half and ready to cut my bias. So bias strip. So you're going to be cutting, I decided to cut a little bit wider binding because we are working with more layers than normal. So I cut 2.5-inch binding. You can go do whatever you are comfortable with. I normally cut 2.25 for my quilts. So I am going to do 2.5. So I'm cutting 2.5-inch strips. So all I wanted to do is make sure that there's a horizontal line along the fold here and the top fold is parallel. And I know my strips are going to be straight. And so each one is going to be perfectly cut on the bias. So little nick here. So as you can see, we have strips that are about 18 to 20 inches long. Some of them are going to be shorter. What we want to do is make bindings that we need a binding strip for all the way around that's about 35-inch long. So I just take 2 of them and sew them together. You want to sew them on the diagonal, but since we have a diagonal edge right here already, I can just take these, layer them together, stitch across to make a long strip. Then once you have done that, we need 2 of them that are about 35 inches long. Then we're just gonna take it to the iron again and fold it in half, right sides out. So you can see my seam here. I pressed that seam open, folded it in half, right side out, so I have a raw edge and then a folded edge. And then the third thing I want to do is I want to take one edge and here that is cut on the diagonal, just fold the edges under, because we're going to use a tucked end binding because we are working with the round edges. It makes it a lot easier. So we have 2 pieces like this for the 2 pot holders. And I want to show you one more thing we want to do, and you can use just a short leftover strip for that. We want to make, if you want to make hangers for your pot holders, you just want to take a little piece of the binding, fold it in half, wrong sides together. Want to give it a press, and then bring, so we're kind of creating a little bias tape, bring the raw edges towards that center fold on each side, and then in the end we're going to fold it back in half and press it. And with this piece we can cut it in half. I'm going to do that later. So I'm actually going to top stitch just to keep these together, and then this will become 2 little hangers for our pot holder. The last thing we have to cut is the fabric for the pocket. Now you can kind of decide if you want a certain design showing on your pot holder. So I am just going to fold this. I think I would like to see this snowflake. So I'm going to fold it however I want that. So you want to find the design in your print and figure out a way to cut that. So then we take our cutout for the pot holder, and where there is a line, we're just going to fold it down because this is the pattern for the pocket. So we're going to fold it on the line and use that for our cutout. So then another thing I do, I just fold it in half this way to find the center, because if I'm going to center a design, I can use that fold crease to know exactly that my pattern is going to be centered. So this is where I'm going to place my pattern. You can either use a pen to draw around it and then cut it out with scissors. You just want to make sure that you have it folded because you need fabric on both sides. Or you can just use a rotary cutter. I would suggest a 45mm or even a smaller one. It's easier to go around curves with a smaller rotary cutter, and then just eyeball it and go around the whole design. You want to cut out 2 pockets like this. So one for each of the pot holders. And I chose not to put any batting in my pocket because that is not going to be up against the hot item that you're holding. And that way you don't have as much thickness when you're putting the binding around the whole thing. So here's my pocket. And now we're going to just layer the pieces we need to do to put it all together. So I have my cutout shape for the quilted part, and this is the 2 layers of batting and then 2 layers of fabric. And then I have my binding ready. So I have one piece long enough, so at least 30 to 35 inches. I have one end cut at an angle and folded that over. So this is ready to be my binding. And then I took the little piece here to make a hanger for the pot holder. So then our pocket goes on one side, like so. On the other side, we want to position the hanger. So we want to place that like this along the edge. So that's going to get stitched into the binding. So I am going to use pins for this, just so it stays in place, because clips are going to be kind of bulky. So I'm going to grab a couple of pins here and just position this hanger how I want it to be. And you can just put it kind of at the top along the raw edge. And then I am going to, oops, pop that pin right in here. So then they just stay there. And on the other side, we have the pocket. So this one, I'm just going to clip around the edge. And before I do the binding, because this is such a thick layer and we have a lot of layers putting that binding on, what I like to do before I put the binding on is going around the whole edge with a zigzag stitch. And then what's that going to do, what that does is kind of condenses the edge. It keeps all the layers together, so none of them is going to have the chance to flip back as I'm sewing that binding on. So that is my first step. I'm going to go ahead and just zigzag around the whole edge, because then also we can get rid of all of these clips and the pins as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, zigzag around the whole edge. So now you can see I have a zigzag around the whole edge. The whole pocket is secured in here. And then our little hanger is also secured. So now I can go ahead and just attach my binding in a regular way. And what I like to do is actually sew it to one side, flip it over, and then stitch it down by machine. So what I prefer to do is I want the stitch down part to be on the side of the pocket. So I'm going to stitch my binding onto the other side. So this side is where I'm going to stitch my binding. So when we're sewing on a bias binding, you just want to go slow because you want to be able to curve it around all the edges. I want to start a little bit from my tail so that when I come around, I can adjust the end of my binding and just tuck it in here and then finish my seam all the way around. So as I go all the way around, I don't adjust my length until I come to this part. I tuck it in, and I have another one finished in that way here. So let me show you. I like to start at an angle on the curve where it's the least curve. So I started down here on the side. I stitched all around, and when I came to this part, I tucked in the ends. So now when I'm to this point, I want to take this to my iron and I want to really press out those edges, push out the binding everywhere before I flip it over the curved edge. So then we should be able to flip it over the edge everywhere, and it's going to naturally want to curve around because of the bias. So once I get it here, I give it another good press, and you can press that little hanger up as well. And then when I get to the other side, I flip it over. So here's the side of the pocket. When I get to this side, before I start securing this down, I want to make sure that this batting is laying flat, and which it did with our zigzag, but I want to make sure, and I always go on the inside first to make sure everything is laying flat, and then I go and press my binding down as it will be stitched down. Now this is already going to start happening automatically because of our binding being cut on the bias, so the fabric will want to do that automatically. So now it is folded over, and our last part is just stitching it down. So I'm choosing to do that with just a straight stitch. I know this is going to be used a heck of a lot as a pot holder, so I'm just going to catch it and top stitch all the way around. So what I want to do is match my thread to the binding in the top. So my top thread is going to be this peacock color, and then on the bottom you want to match your thread to this fabric. So since it is multicolored, I am just going to use a light gray so it matches this color, because you are going to see that stitch just a little bit on the inside here. But you want to make sure that that little hang tag or the hanger here is folded out this way so that it doesn't get stitched over here. So I want to make sure that's secured that way as I go stitch this down. When I start stitching, I usually want to start where I tucked in my binding so I can kind of control that edge. So that's where I'm going to start on this one. So here we are with a finished pot holder. This is our pocket. So as we pull something hot out of the oven, we slip our fingers in here, and this is all going to be insulated and safe. I hope you enjoyed making the G-Easy pot holders with me. What a fast and easy project. So handy and great gifts. They go together quick, so they kind of get addicting to make. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.